Do you remember when the world was destroyed? On the broken battlefields of a world long dead, two factions fight for what remains of the future. This is the Dryad-Eldritch War.
Hello, Ace the Supervillain here. In this video, I'm going to show you some of my map making techniques that I've used for the Eldritch Dryad War series. If you've seen this show so far, this is the map that I have been using. I wanted to make something that was just quick and simple that I could jump into the game and start playing quickly. So if you can see my layer stack over here, I've got all of the background elements in this layer, which is the only one that's turned on. I have the round counter up here. We have the fireball checker here. And this is for the AoE effect fireball. And actually, we've got a special technique that I turned off for working. So what you can do is go to Image, Configure Grid. I've got it set to 36 by 36, or 1/2 inch increments. And that means I can snap to either, let's zoom in so you can kind of see that a little better. So I can snap to either the center of these squares or onto the grid corners, depending on what I need to do. And yeah, it's Team Eldritch here. And then the idea there is that I can kind of move things pretty easily. And it'll just snap right into position. And then I don't have to worry about, things drifting, which, it's not like a huge deal. I think, let's just turn it off again. Like if you're moving a bunch of stuff, it might, kind of drift, but like, with the grids, I guess you can see it pretty well. But it's just, just a bit of, me wanting to be extra sure that everything's in the right place. So that's, again, View, Snap to Grid. You could also show grid if you want, but you can't adjust the opacity. And you might be able to. I don't know. It just, it's easier, I think, to give yourself layers, right? Yeah, it doesn't have an alpha rating. So you can do dashed or something like that. Anyway, so view, don't show the grid. Okay. Now to get a grid, let's turn off the characters there. Oh, yeah, actually, that's what I was in the middle of saying. So then I have one layer group for each of the teams. And so then you can just pull them around. This is right after we've done some battles, so everyone's kind of out and about. And then if someone gets KO'd, you can just come over to their layer visibility. Boop, boop, boop. Knocks them out, but you can still bring them right back for the next match. Very handy. Now for this game, we also had this extra stuff folder, which is where we keep the what was this? The Hill for the King of the Hill match. We also did there's this thing called the Dark Crystal, which is for, I think it's just called the Dark Crystal mission, but it's like a capture the flag mission. And then there's this guy who's gonna show up for prisoner missions once we get around to that. Yeah, not if, but when. Okay, so let's get into the background. So let's start with the base. So this is just a nice, simple texture here. Actually, there's really only two textures here. I'm going to show you where I got them from. This is opengameart.org. It has lots of stuff. And this one was by Drummyfish. And then the rock texture that you'll see later is Bright Retro is part of this. He also does the one that we use for King of the Hill. I think that's the one for the rocks. Though he does a couple. So this is basically just, just take the texture and kind of spray it all over. I also I adjusted the colors a little bit to make it a little more dull so that it's not popping too much against the bright characters. Then on top of this, because this, if you look at it long enough, you can really see that it's just you know, a pattern looks like bathroom tile or something. So we added on top of that this background noise, which like that, and that's set to an overlay mode, and that you can just get to like filters, render, noise. Any of these make pretty simple stuff. I think Plasma does it with color. So that would be, let's take a look at that. Filters, render, noise, Plasma. There it is. And set that to overlay. Yeah, there you go. So that could be fun for like a Magic World kind of a thing, or maybe a I was thinking maybe like a palace. It would be a little wacky, but you could do it. Anyways, that's ours. And so as you can see, that breaks up the shape so it doesn't look so repeating, because this texture doesn't repeat. So then we have, which part actually goes on next? This are the rocks. So the rocks are actually a solid layer, a solid color. It's not a solid color, solid texture. What do I want? Disable layer mask. There we go. So originally this texture wasn't repeating, so I used GIMP's Make Seamless feature to give it a seamless thing. Then we have a layer mask on it that looks like this, so anything black will be transparent, anything white will show up. And that way, if I'm editing the layer mask, I can basically come up in here and draw something in like that. Of course, what I actually did was I used the rectangle like that, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, just like that. And anyway, so you can make changes like that to your layer mask, and then just come back and erase it. And these are fit to the grid, so I tried to make this these big obstructions kind of 3 square, so it would be 3 inches at least thing. It got a little wacky down in here. Started freehanding a bit more, and I don't know that you know matters. It's just that's just how I did it. And so underneath that we've got the shadows, and so shadows are basically, we just copied the layer mask, invert it, change it to a multiply layer. So otherwise it's just kind of white and black there. Not sure why there's a chunk missing. That was probably... oh, yes, I do. Well, yeah, I originally had another big stone right in the middle there, another one of these obstruction things. And then I decided that wasn't conducive to combat. There was just too much obstruction to have it right in the middle. So I took it out. Let's go back to multiply. And then the cover. So these are, if we zoom in, this is the same texture going on over here, just shrunk, and take a little eraser to gnaw out the edges, make it a little more rock-like. And then just copy paste that, and I used the that snap to grid function to keep each of them right in there on the grid. Now, if you don't want to use grids, of course, that's pretty simple. Let's talk about making the grid. Another very simple thing. So you just render pattern grid. Now, in previous versions of GIMP, there was also one to render a hexagon grid, and I don't know where that went. Maybe that might be a plugin that you can still download for GIMP. So if you do want to use hexagonal maps, and I do like hexagonal maps, if you want that, you can do that. There's also some people like to do it with I think that's decor, artistic. Yeah, with the mosaic filter. Yeah, which I don't use very often, so I don't know where it is. Mosaic. But anyways, yeah. If you, I don't know. I think this is simpler. If you look up the tutorials for the GIMP mosaic filter, you might find some interesting stuff to do for your own maps. So, okay. Oh yeah, so if you didn't want to use a grid, and having done it for a while, counting the squares is like simple. It's say to yourself, oh, I'm just going to count some squares. It was pretty time consuming though. So for the next map and the next series of games, I am going to try it with measurements, and I'll show you how to do that on the next map. So here we are. We've got the battle lines set up. I've learned from this, and I'm gonna add some new features here. And as you can see, this time I decided to be much more artistic. These textures all come from the BitGem. I think it's called like the Mega Textures Collection. It's pretty expensive. It's something that I have for making 3D art. So these are like big, huge textures, like mostly 512. The water's actually double that. It's 1024. And so I did keep some things. Obviously, we've got the same teams. We've got the same old round counter. The fireball is around here somewhere. So let's talk about how I made this one, because this is the one you really want to know how to make, right? So what we start with is this random texture. So again, those are filters. You go to render, noise. I think this one was solid noise. Might have been difference cloud. These are both kind of similar. But you render one, you mess with the settings. I like to use like a really low scale to do that. Let's give you a nice little test to show you how this works. So we go to render, noise. Yeah, I think it's solid noise. Yeah, right? That looks pretty simple. And I think this will actually use it will actually generate the same noise every time unless I change the seed. So just go to new seed, get something different. And then from here we go to colors, posterize. As you can see, that will reduce the total colors and give us something like that. That's kind of cool. I believe and so as you see, the more you do this, the more of these levels you get, and you can see now it's starting to look like terrain. I think for the other one, we went up to 10 levels. And even if we go up to 10, we're not actually using all of these levels, although you could, depending on your taste. And so this is what we ended up with for the other map. So you can see, I think this is just a more higher contrast normal or random map that we got from the other thing. So if you wanted to do, and I'm just kind of thinking, like, because this strikes me as like a maybe a canyon scene, so I might take these really deep pits and flatten that, so you've got the high peaks and not the low ones. So let me zoom in, and the posterize will do this kind of pixel perfect edge right there, because we're using a very big resolution. Oh yeah, which I forgot to talk about. So these are for 72 dots per inch, and they are set to be 3 feet across. Let's talk about this one. So each of these grids will measure to 1 inch. So if we use our rectangle tool, this is if we're measuring in inches, off by 1, or 1 inch by 1 inch, nearly. Yep, and then there's 36 of them, which also means so when there's a lot of the measurements in the one page fantasy skirmish rules come up to 18 inches, so that's basically half the battlefield at this size. And I was thinking that 3 foot by 3 foot play area is basically the gold standard for skirmish games. I have since seen a few that call for a 4 foot by 4 foot area. So maybe that would change things, although I think since you do have the 6 turn time limit, I think that being right up in each other's faces right away seems like necessary to really get anything done. All right, and so then once you have this, you open up a texture. Let's see, open these textures. I have lots and lots and lots of them. Let's go to the bitgem folder. We get earth floor. Let's use this because I was thinking about this, but it didn't work out so well. So you copy this, click, and then in your patterns thing, you could also use the GIMP patterns, although these are going to be very small for what we're making. But then you select the clipboard image pattern there. We're going to make a new layer. Select. Oh, actually, to use the color select, you shift clicked to increase it. Yeah, let's do that. So like I was saying, we'll say all of this can be flat. And go to this, fill whole selection, pattern fill. This is the fill bucket, sorry, don't call it this. And whoops, this one. There you go. And let's do open Because I have an idea. It's nothing more dangerous than ace with an idea. Let's do... I want something that's like rocks. Stone floor. Let's do floor. Let's do wood. Do I have rocks? Rocks? Here we go. Rocks. Rocks and plants? How about rocks and plants? It's probably a little too different. Part of the art to this is picking things that fit well. Oops, not that tool. So pick our color select and new layer. Same deal, pattern fill. And what I'm going to try now, so I still have that selection. Add a new layer on top of this with that effect. Give me dodge. It's a bit bright. I think we can just adjust that, or actually we can go to levels. Want this? That's what we want. Okay. So what levels is doing is because since we're using like the lighter tones to do this, we're taking, and then the darkest tone for this selection right now is is that kind of half gray, medium gray. So we're basically shifting all the it's actually values. We should use proper art stuff. We're taking all of the values down so that the darkest is black or close to black. And then when we're doing dodge, that means the black ones aren't really going to do anything, and it's the lighter ones that are pushing it, which gives us basically more contrast. So now this is still a bit kind of too flat. So we're going to come into blur, Gaussian blur, really high up there. Maybe not that high. Around like that. There you go. Might do, yeah, let's do a little less. We've got like still kind of that idea of peaks happening. Like that. There you go. And that's basically how I did this water texture. Let's turn everything off and get back to that. So I've got this one kind of flat texture as the base. Water, I'm basically using that same technique but with the layer mask instead of the dodge layer. Same thing for this. I'm just adding like a little bit of drop shadow with the drop shadow filter to kind of pop that up a bit. Oh, actually, no. That was first try. Didn't like that. Second try was this. There it is. And same thing that I did before with these rocks. Just kind of give it a little transparency mask. Just kind of let it flow into the sand. Which, yeah, is a little, like, I think you can kind of see that. I don't know about that. But up here. And there's other ways to do that. Like, I could do that so that it's more of a grainy transition. And I might, since it's a layer mask, it's easy to play around with. I might give that another shot later. But on top of that, then we got, whoops, the rocks. And this one I did use the that shadow texture, and I think having both of them with the shadow texture, it looked a little too cartoony. Then I also did, you can kind of see this edge. We used the edge detection filter to create basically some line work around them to I think makes them look a little more like rocks. And so we have some kind of nice things. This time I added these placement guides. If you watched the first video already, I think you saw in the first fight I accidentally put Ruka too close to the opposite side. And she was able to, I think, kind of move in faster than she was supposed to. So these are, I believe the rule is you have to be 18 inches away from the opposing side. So since it's 3 foot by 3 foot, we've got 9-inch areas on either side, which are valid for putting troops in. If we did it diagonally, that could be kind of different, and that might work a bit better, but just kind of everything measures a bit better in what do you call it when it's not diagonal? Orthogonal, maybe? It works better this way. Now I did make a grid layer, although like I said, I think we're not going to use it this time. So the technique, if you do want to go gridless, which you'll be seeing me do a lot, there's this tool over here called the measure tool. You can set its measurements to pixels, inches, millimeters, all kinds of different things. So you click on a point. Let's do kind of a test move. So these dryads had 6 inches of movement. So as you can kind of see it showing up down here. Kind of trail that back in. And there's going to be something like it's about how exact I need to be, since it is being super exact, and I don't want to, spend all of these videos just trying to really get my hand into the exact point. And the one tricky thing about this is that then once you switch to the move tool to actually move it, it's gone. So what needs to happen, I think, is they need to just kind of look at some kind of point of reference. So like I can see we're kind of heading right into the arch of this brick on the texture. And then I can just move that, boom, 6 inches. And for something, now of course technically Ruka can fly, so this doesn't actually matter. But like if I wanted to do a compound move, let's get this guy back over here. If I wanted to do a compound move, I think I would do like that. So you can see that's like 12.5. Get to there, and then Ruka's got 18 move total. Because I should have moved her past the past these gates here. So let's give her like a 1.5 move. We're about there. There you go. So then I've used 12 and 1.5. I've got 13, 14. I've got 4 inches left. I can go like right there. Ta-da! So that's how you would complete that. Now there are some skirmish games in which that is absolutely not allowed. A unit has to move in a straight line, and there's no language to that effect in the one-page fantasy rules. If you're playing with your friends and compound moves are being unnecessarily burdensome, then think about it. But for now, I'm going to try it with compound moves allowed. You could have a rule too, like you can't make more than like one bend in your compound move. Whatever. Do what feels right. Let's see. What else? Oh, and then all right. So part of my thinking for this map, why we've got like water and stuff in it, is because there are rules about moving in rough terrain. and I wanted to... And I was thinking maybe part of the reason why the shooting units don't function very well is because all of the melee units can basically just bum rush them too easily. There's just not a whole lot of reason to shoot. So I was thinking we're going to try this map with more of the broken terrain. And I was originally thinking that the sand and shallow water are tough movement. I think like maybe sand would be one level of tough movement and shallow water would be another level of tough movement. And then the deep water like this, where the opacity is full, would be impassable, but like impassable to move, but not for shooting. So like you can shoot over this deep water but not move through it. And now obviously, because I have this nice looking thing with the smooth transitions between all of the layers, that would get messy to calculate, especially if we were doing this competitively with someone. I'm sure everyone's got that one friend who's like, I'm totally able to do that. Like, no, you're in the water. So to fix that, we have this special edge detect layer. And so this is where all of the special movement areas is. And so I generated this by doing, let's go back to our, here, like that. Now, Team Dryad, I was expecting you to climb up to. There we go. So we're going to duplicate. We'll go to filters, edge detect. Which one did I do? I think it's just difference of Gaussians. Yep. Like that. And then you can turn this into, take an add layer. It's a little hard to see. Let's go to colors, brightness, contrast. Increase like that, or you can do it with the levels, either way. Let's go back to this. Don't need that. Yeah. And so yeah, so now I could precisely measure if someone is in the water or not. And one thing that I have yet to work out as of this video is that there actually aren't rules for multiple levels of rough terrain. So in the end, it might just be sand is normal and shallow water is the only rough terrain. So we'll have to think about that. Although I feel like, I don't know, because other than these few places where you would need to cross shallow water to get from one place to another, it seems like there's not a whole lot of reason to ever mess with that. So I don't know. We're feeling things out. Anyways, so as you can see, I've added these circles to it, and this is basically going to serve as their model base. If I were being maybe more traditional, I guess I might move the bases so that they were down at the bottom. I'll just show you the reason why I don't do that is because this is the bounds of the layer. So to actually put something below it, I would have to do this whole thing, resizing layers, and I wanted to get it done quickly. So I didn't. This is quickly, and this is already, since we already added those, something like that in this style for the two dragons, I decided, let's just keep going with what we're doing. So I have made, the dragons have 2-inch bases. The heroes, wizards, and kind of normal combat units all have 1-inch bases. and then the pawns, which are the treelings and the slimes, have half-inch bases. And this is a little hard to tell with the trees because they really kind of go everywhere up top. But you know, I can kind of see where it is. So I guess it's just, I mean, the number one rule of playing any sort of game with other people is be cool. So, you know, we'll just try and avoid confrontation with this, and I think it'll all work. What am I doing? Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else I want to mention? I think that's it. So hope you'll stay tuned to the next exciting battles in the Dryad-Eldritch War series. I'll see you then. Thanks for tuning into that episode of the Dryad-Eldritch War. The rules are One Page Fantasy Skirmish by John David Slore, which I found on Free War Games Wiki, and the battle sprites are from the Akashic's Librarian. And I'm Ace the Supervillain. You can find my main product line, the Acheron series, on cgtrader.com. Thanks, and see you around.